Welcome to Catherine B. Roy Show. Today, I'm very happy because someone who is very, very dear to my heart is here with me. Jennifer Drago is an award-winning strategist and business coach. She helps corporations, small business owners, consultants, and coaches develop and implement a laser-focused vision and strategy so they can earn more and amplify their impact. Jennifer, I'm so happy to have you here with me today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here too. And the feelings are mutual. I love working with you in any way I can.
Thank you so much. I adore your energy. You're just pure light, and I'm amazed. I was on your workshop. I really loved what you delivered there, and I would like people to know exactly what you do because I think we need a lot more people like you, especially in the corporate space. And would you like to share a little bit about your story first before we dive into the specifics?
Sure, you bet. So I recently left the corporate world after a 30-year career where I worked mostly in nonprofits, both in the healthcare space and the senior living space. And I had this opportunity to work on the strategy and planning side, which really was facilitating strategic planning, looking at new business opportunities, doing feasibility analyses about those opportunities, and then helping to put those plans into action. And I just really loved that work. But then I also had a chance at one point in my career to go into the operational space. So really to put my money where my mouth was, like, okay, you planned these programs, now go operate them. And so so it's great because now as a consultant, what I do is I work with organizations on charting a course, helping them figure out what their vision is and then charting a course. But then I can also do operational assessments and recommendations to help them really get there, execute on their plans, but then have a sustainable business. And so that's often where my consulting groups go, right? We start with a strategy, but then we quickly switch into operational optimization because there's so many opportunities, especially in today's economy, to do things better, to streamline, and to work smarter, not harder.
I like that, especially the last part. Let's work smarter, not harder.
Yes.
Let's dive deeper in this. How do you help business leaders when they actually want to grow their businesses?
Well, the first thing that I try to do is to understand what that vision is. And because you've been through my workshop as a business leader, you know that that's the first step in the process that I lead. It's a vision-directed goals process.
Mm-hmm.
And articulating that vision often is something that many leaders haven't taken the time to do. And
Mm-hmm.
I ask a series of questions in about 10 different categories that help them think, okay, where am I taking this business over the next 3 to 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
And what will my competitive environment look like? What are my products going to look like? How am I going to acquire customers? Is it going to be different in the future? Do
Mm-hmm.
I need to improve my profit margins? Do I need to look at new suppliers? Really analyze what that business will look like 3 years from now, because then if we know where we're headed, we
Mm-hmm.
can chart the roadmap, right? We can craft our course to get there
Mm-hmm.
and create very specific goals that move us toward that vision in each annual period.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I always start with a business that's looking to grow in particular. We first have to just articulate what that growth looks like.
Mm-hmm. We need to know where we want to go if we want to get there, right?
100%. I mean, would you take a road trip and not know where you're headed? I guess some of the adventurous people would. I certainly
I'm
wouldn't.
not one of those. No.
No, why? We'd want to have snacks. We'd want to have the right clothes. We'd want to take enough clothes for wherever we were headed. We'd want to have hotels planned if it was a super long trip. We'd want to have our car gassed up and have the appropriate maintenance done, right? We'd have to prepare to go on our road trip. So you absolutely have to know where you're headed.
And I have to share just my experience. It was only a workshop, and there was an exercise when we talked about our goals in terms of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and actually everything got clarified. Like, I'm now in the process of scaling and hiring agencies to do several things for me, and the goals which I set on your workshops are the goals which I'm actually sharing with them. So what exactly I would like to achieve. So it was just a short version of the way you work, and it's truly helpful. And I would like people to really know that. So thank you for that.
Thank
Uh,
you. And you just brought up something important that
mhm,
I would love to just articulate as well, which is
mhm,
when
mhm,
you have that vision narrative, you know, as the leader, that's a reminder for you of where I'm headed. But
mhm,
when you have a team or you're building a team,
mhm,
sharing that vision narrative with them is so
mhm,
powerful because
mhm.
they can think of ways to help you get there that you're not even thinking of, right? So
Exactly.
yeah, so I love that. And actually, before we end, I have a workbook on my website that's specifically around that visioning exercise. And
Mhm.
so I'd love to offer that to your listeners as a freebie.
Wonderful, wonderful. We'll share the link. I truly enjoyed what you showed us in a very short workshop. So, any kind of material which can help anyone in my audience is really, really welcome. So, you will send me the link and we will share. When we talk about actions, what is the most important action that a business leader needs to take? If we can narrow that to one, the most important.
Yeah, well, and I might offer two or three because we've already actually talked about the
I knew
first
that.
one, right? The first one is having a vision. So
Mhm,
if you are the CEO, the ultimate leader of your business, it's your responsibility. It's actually the role of a CEO to
mhm,
have a vision of where you're taking that
mhm,
organization. If you're
mhm,
a leader that falls, within, you're a manager in an
mhm,
organization, it's your responsibility to take that vision and articulate it to your employees. But
mhm.
even more than that, we talked about goals, right? You have to have
Mhm,
annual goals that are going to move the business, and those too should be cascaded through the organization so that
mhm,
everybody knows what their role is in achieving those goals and moving toward that vision. And so those to me are the most important things that a leader can do. And it's Catherine, you'd be surprised how often those things don't happen, or they happen in a way that doesn't, without intention, right? So they
mhm,
don't get the attention, and therefore the intention of having them is not realized,
mhm,
right? Because it's like, oh, we do this goal setting thing every year. Create your own goals. No, no, no. We have to talk about it. It has to be visible. We need to be talking about how we are doing according to that vision and according to that goals, at least monthly, if not
mhm,
weekly. I mean, it just needs to be part of our everyday conversation. And
mhm.
in so many organizations, it's not.
I actually listened to one of your interviews, and I was surprised with the answer you gave. There are a lot of organizations which actually do the strategic planning, and they have all of this, and then they keep it in the drawer. I can't even
100%.
imagine that happening, but it was one of the topics you actually touched in the interview. So based on your experience until now, the organizations and corporations which are successful and those which are not, uh,
Mhm.
how that like planning and goal setting and actually, I worked in corporation like 15 years, and it was never clear to me like what exactly is the goal and why we are doing something, because that information didn't even came to me. What do you
Right.
think about that? I don't feel that's a good way to grow the business, but what really happens there and how you can help with that?
Yeah, thank you. I read a Harvard Business Review journal article a bit ago when I was doing some research on goals.
Hmm.
And it was interesting that this particular article said 95% of a organization's employees have no idea what the goals are in the
Exactly.
company.
Exactly.
95%. So that alone kind of gives us the answer, right? We have to you can't over communicate what we do, why we do it, and where we're headed. And so that's really the message for leaders is communication, and then tying we all do performance reviews in corporations, but
Mm-hmm.
tying those performance reviews not just to, was I a nice person? Did I provide good customer service? Did I come to work every day? But how did I help the company achieve certain goals that I can impact?
Mm-hmm.
And really rate people on things that help move the company forward. So I think that is absolutely, and it's kind of akin to what you just said about the worst performers are the ones that put the strategic plan in the drawer or put it on a binder on the shelf. We have to be talking about it. It has to have visibility in our company each and every day. So every staff meeting should be focused on something related to it. I mean, you don't have to beat it into people, but you should be talking about it enough to where
Mm-hmm.
me as an employee, I know exactly where the organization's headed, and I also know my role in the organization's success.
Mm, I couldn't agree more. And the alignment of our personal goals and the goals of the corporation are very important if we want really to get there. My experience was like I just, you know, I do my job, I get my task, I just, and then at the, I don't know, quarter or a mid-year or at the end of the year, we see some kind of results, but we didn't really know what is the goal, and how we can give our best to really achieve that. And I think that's really missing. And on the other side, there are companies which really focus on planning and setting goals and all of that, but they lack execution, like implementation of all of that, and not actually get where they want to go. So how you can help them when they actually set the goals and they know what they want to do but fail or in implementation.
Yeah, one of the biggest things I try to do when I work with a corporation around their strategic plan or their goals is I really try to help them get very specific on metrics. So how are
Mm-hmm.
they going to measure their success on these goals?
Mm-hmm.
There's another thing that I like to say is true in corporation, what gets measured matters, right? And so we should have scorecards or that easily in a glance show how we're doing on our metrics that relate to our most important goals.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll take that a step further. I feel like each leader should have a responsibility for one or more metrics that relate to their position and should be measured on those, not just in their performance review, but honestly on a week to week or month to month basis. And having that accountability is really important. So, so I would say scorecards, accountability, which is, managing to those metrics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, just, yeah, I think those are really the two kind of important things. Well, and I guess the third thing that goes along with that is being willing to take the right action if the accountability isn't there, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
another key thing I see probably a little too often in the corporate field is that we know we have a weak link in the chain,
Mm-hmm.
or that a person is on the wrong seat on the bus. Maybe they're a great employee, but they're just not in the right role. And we
Mm-hmm.
fail to take action fast enough to make a difference. So all those things are so important to execution. And honestly, from the employee perspective, I know as a
Mm-hmm.
leader, it's hard to do all those things
Mm-hmm.
because I've been there for years. But on the employee side, if I'm being accountable, but my manager isn't holding the person who works in the next office to the
Mm-hmm.
same level of accountability,
Mm-hmm.
that's demotivating, and that ruins
Exactly.
my engagement, right?
Exactly.
So and then when we all have to deal with poor performers on our team because leadership isn't taking the responsibility to do something about that performance,
Mm-hmm.
also demotivating. So for all concerned, let's just fix these problems and be good executors.
Exactly, exactly. It was like, it was like I was in a time machine. Today I published something about the time machine, but like I went back to it, and exactly what you said, I just lived that. And it doesn't feel well when you give the best of yourself, and it just doesn't fit. Maybe you're doing something which is not in alignment with what you can do the best, or there are so many little things in the corporation which can actually be done better. And this is why I think your work is so important, because if we don't know where we go, if we don't know our strategy, if we don't know our goals, how we're going to achieve that? Like you mentioned traveling or sports, for example. Every team player in the sport knows exactly what they need to do and how to get the team there, right? So
Yes.
that's such powerful metaphor. But you switched from corporation to being a consultant now, and what was your biggest surprise when you changed the environment and the way you work?
Well, the biggest surprise as I went into corporations is, kind of what I've mentioned it, right? It's just that strategy, which is, my love, doesn't have the visibility that it needs in the majority of the organizations that I work with, and so it's I I say it hurts my heart, right? I go in and the strategy's in the drawer and I'm like, okay, why is this not working for us? Because and I think it's because strategy is kind of this mystery thing, right? And we don't take the time to explain what it is to our employees or why it helps us, right? And it's all about that, having the destination and getting people excited about where the organization is headed and how they can be a part of it. So I think that's the biggest surprise that I have when I work with corporations. And another one that I will say that is a little too common, not as common, is not having clear metrics, right? So every organization looks at their financials. So you see the balance statement and the income
Yes.
statement every month, right?
Yes.
And that is those are important things to
Mhm,
look at. Don't get me
mhm,
wrong.
mhm,
They should be linked to your strategic plan, by the way, which is another problem. But just the overall, like, how are we doing on our goals, or how are we doing on our key metrics beyond our profitability, beyond revenue versus budget and things like that.
mhm,
Um, there are a lot of organizations that either don't leaders that don't value the numbers or they're afraid of the numbers. And
mm,
I hate to say that, but there's,
mm,
I don't like getting on the scale in the
mhm,
morning.
mhm,
And I certainly don't do it every day, but I try to do it once a week because I know if I don't, whoo, all
mhm.
hell's going to break loose. So same thing as looking at the right metrics in your business. You have to do it even when it's uncomfortable.
I never thought about it. It just didn't came to my mind. Like, I love numbers and I need to know how things are going. And now when you mentioned, absolutely, finances needs to be connected to the strategic plan. How else we would know, like, one of the most important elements of our business, is it really working or not, right? Especially in the huge corporations where there are so many transactions and all of that. Like, that's the core part of business growth. Now, when you mention that, what would be like number one obstacle of all of these things we mentioned? Maybe we didn't even mention this one. When it comes to actually a leader being there and limiting their own success.
Um, That's a great question because it's they all kind of cascade into one another. But I guess I would say if the vision and goals aren't there and articulated, like
Mhm,
the communication of it, even if you didn't measure it, right?
mhm,
You would get your organization further faster if you as a leader said, here's where we're headed, let's go jump on this bus, and you kept it front of mind with talking about it a lot. So
mhm.
communication of that vision and goals, I think, is probably potentially the number one obstacle, because if that doesn't happen, nothing else happens.
And it's so true. It's so true, because if we don't communicate and don't understand what we have to do, how we are going to achieve what we need to achieve, right? It
Yeah.
sounds simple, but it's actually much more complex in a large corporations where there are a lot of people, a lot of levels of management and executives and all of that. So it's not so simple as it sounds, but it is possible to be achieved.
Well,
Mhm.
Well, I was just going to say, our employees aren't mind readers, right? So just think about things that happen
Exactly.
in your own house, right? If you need your husband to take the trash out or to run an errand for you, he can't read your mind. You're going to
Exactly.
ask him.
Exactly.
So why are we not talking about talking to our employees about the most important things in our business?
Exactly. And I was surprised, working with business owners. Um, they actually don't. Many of them don't have an idea, or if I may say, a clue that their employees need to know the goals, the strategy. Uh, they just think like the top management needs to know that, and the people who are working there are just there to do their job. But I think that people need much more, and that they can achieve more if we share with them our core values, our vision. They can feel like a part of a system, of a family, and they will give more from themselves. So I think that's important. But what's the common, right? What's the common mistake that leaders actually do when it comes to business growth? What's one, like, what is the most
One,
common mistake?
yeah, I would say they're slow to react, right?
Mm,
And we don't want to be too fast to react. So it's absolutely a balancing act. But we talked about, when we have a poor performer,
mhm,
it's hard to work on that. But maybe it's a training issue. Maybe it's they're just in the wrong seat on the bus, or
mhm,
maybe they need to leave the organization. But
mhm,
whatever the action is that needs to be taken, we need to take that. If we know that a certain area of operations of business, for example, isn't functioning in
mhm,
the efficient or effective way that we need it to,
mhm, mhm,
let's address that. I mean, it just amazes me how long it takes sometimes to make decisions that if we were in, a Fortune 500 company,
mhm,
um, the delay may not be there, right? They may be a little bit more quick at taking action. So I was just telling somebody about a de-identified company that I was working with that
mhm,
had mostly through the pandemic had moved to a work from home environment. And
mhm,
so they had, at one point, they were busting at the seams in terms of needing office space. They had two office spaces, one they owned, one they were leasing for
mhm,
$10,000 a month. Now, this company's a nonprofit, so $10,000 a month is $120,000 a year, which was a chunk of their budget.
mhm,
And so the process, because everyone had started to work from home, they
mhm,
could easily downsize just to their owned building and get rid of that lease.
mhm,
Um, this was, talking about this almost 24 months ago, and they still have that lease space. They haven't made that decision. And it was,
wow.
yeah, so it seemed like an easy decision. So will it be difficult? Yes. Do we have to deal with all the files and all the stuff we own? Yes. Do we have to make sure our employees know that where they can come in and work in our
Mhm,
other building? Absolutely. I mean,
mhm,
lots of steps, but they're all manageable. So why are we wasting time and wasting money? That just, yeah. So that speed
mhm.
of execution, I guess, is the biggest mistake.
That's a great example. I actually never thought about it, but now when you mentioned it, yeah, absolutely. Especially in the example which you just shared with us. But uh, um, now you mentioned pandemics and how things change and people working from home and maybe the hybrid way of working now everywhere. Like some companies kept people working from home. I know Elon Musk bought Twitter and he said everyone comes back to the office, for example. Is it more challenging than before? Now, when we have a hybrid way of actually working, I guess it is.
Yeah.
But as a business leader, what someone should do, and or how to like, we had a strategic plan which was like 5 or 10 years. COVID hit, everything changed. People started working from home. They maybe were not delivering what they were supposed to, right? How we can pivot from that like usual way of doing business to this hybrid now as less painful as possible, if I may say so.
Right, right. Well, one of the things that was positive about the pandemic is that, especially, I live in Arizona in the United States, and we have a huge growing population and huge labor shortages in many areas in the businesses where I work.
Mm-hmm.
So while remote work can't help a frontline worker when you need a face-to-face person, as you do in healthcare and senior living, it can, you can source labor from all over the globe for back of the house positions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or positions that are more administrative. So that's a positive when you're in a labor shortage, right? But we need all kinds of strategies to adapt to this hybrid workplace, because our employees are, they're unmotivated, they're not engaged, we're not communicating to them enough, right? So first and foremost, let's focus on communication because we've talked about that a lot. We need weekly meetings with our teams so they
Mm-hmm.
still operate as a team, and we're talking through all the things we've talked about. What are we working on? What's everybody's role? We also need regular one-on-one meetings with each employee so we can find out, what's going on with them. I mean, not just about their performance and about their projects, but
Mm-hmm.
really taking time to say, how you doing? Are you okay? How's your family? Because when we can't eyeball them, we can't necessarily understand what's going on in their world or how we can support them as leaders. So
Mm-hmm.
that's communication. But then, on the engagement and motivation, it's about all the things that we've talked about also, which is, involving them in bigger decisions and making sure that they don't just feel like a number. And I know this won't be popular with some, but when we come on Zoom meetings, everybody has their camera on. How can you engage with a blank screen? That's not.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some certain strategies, and then to the extent possible, if you are hybrid, but in one geographic area, bringing people together every so often, at least to have lunch together and have some fun, right? Fun's a big thing I think we missed when we moved into, we had fun with Zoom in the beginning, and then I think everybody's like, okay, no more Zoom happy hours, no more trivia contests, right? But
Yes.
let's get back to the fun.
So true. You are such a gem. I really love, as I mentioned at the beginning, I love your energy. I love the way you deliver things. I love the way you communicate and everything that you do. Really, I believe that people
Yeah.
like you can truly make a difference because you are not, like only mind focus, your heart open too, and your approach to everyone and everything. That is my personal opinion as a real human being, and I'm very very grateful that we met and that we crossed paths. But if someone would like to work with you, what are the best ways, how they can find you, how they can reach out to you?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So first is going to be my website, which is peak2profit.com.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a link right on the front page to schedule a free time to connect. And then the other place that I hang out a lot is on LinkedIn, which is where we met. And so my profile is LinkedIn/in/Jennifer Drago, and you can find me there. And of course, always message me. So I would love to connect with any of your listeners who like this content. This is the type of content that I produce on a daily basis, and love to just connect with you.
Thank you so much, Jen, for being my guest. I truly enjoyed it, and I hope you did too.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much.
Talk soon. Bye bye.
Bye.